I grew up chasing expectations I could never reach. My parents wanted perfection. My siblings expected failure. I was the black sheep, always trying to prove I belonged. But every time I fell short, I could feel them smiling behind my back. Eventually, I stopped trying. And when they finally noticed the silence, it was already too late. The dining room was too bright. Her mother always said warm lighting made the food feel more comforting, but it only made the tension easier to see. Her sister, Amara, was already halfway through explaining her promotion. Something about managing her own department now, more responsibility, longer hours, better pay. Their mother leaned in with that familiar shine in her eyes, like she could take partial credit for the success. "That's my girl," she said, reaching across the table to squeeze Amara's hand. "I always knew you'd lead something." Their father nodded. "You've always had that spark, even as a kid. You remember how she used to organize our vacations. Color-coded binders," her brother added, laughing. "She planned the beach trips better than Mom." Everyone chuckled. Then their mother turned to her. Lee passed the salad. She did, silently. Her fork hadn't touched anything on her plate yet. The chicken was dry, the rice too soft, but no one asked if she liked it. "Did you fold your napkin like that on purpose?" her mother asked, frowning. "It looks messy." Lee blinked, looked down at the napkin just draped across her lap like it always was. No one else's was folded neatly, but hers stood out. Her brother leaned over to peek at it. "That's a first," he muttered. "Usually she just skips the napkin altogether." No one corrected him. Not even Amara, who was sitting close enough to see Lee reach for it when she first sat down. Lee didn't speak. Her father reached for the pepper. "Anyway," he said, "Amara, are they giving you stock options yet?" "No, but my supervisor hinted." "Of course they will," her mother cut in. "Smart companies know how to keep value." Lee reached for her water. The glass was full. She hadn't taken a sip. The room buzzed with familiar rhythm, praise, questions, inside jokes that had nothing to do with her. She had updates, too. A small freelance win, a scholarship shortlist. Nothing major, but it mattered to her. Still, she said nothing, because the only time they seemed to look her way was when something was off. Her napkin, her timing, her presence. And every time she tried to fix it, it somehow proved them right. She kept her hands folded in her lap and waited for someone to notice she hadn't spoken in 15 minutes. No one did. The dish didn't even break. It landed with a dull clatter, wobbling once on the tile before settling face down on the floor. A smear of sauce traced behind it. Lee froze mid-step, one hand still stretched out, empty. Across the kitchen, her brother Elijah chuckled. "Classic." He didn't say it with anger, didn't raise his voice. He said it like someone watching a rerun of a show he already knew the ending to. Their mother glanced over from the sink. Lee. Just her name, no sharp tone, no concern. Just layered disappointment, like she'd dropped the plate on purpose. "It slipped," Lee said. Elijah leaned against the counter, shaking his head. "You always mess it up somehow." Their father walked in, saw the mess, sighed. "Can someone get a towel?" Lee crouched before anyone else could move. Napkins first. Then the towel. "I've got it," she said quickly. "No, let your sister clean it," their mother replied, already turning back to the dishes. "She should be more careful." Elijah tossed a wet rag at the edge of the counter. "You dropped the one with the good glaze." "It's not broken," Lee murmured, wiping the floor. "Still," her mother said, "you were just standing still, Lee. How do you even?" "Can we not make it a thing?" Amara called from the hallway. She said it slipped. Lee stood slowly, holding the now empty plate with both hands. Her mother didn't reply. Elijah kept smiling like the joke hadn't ended. And Lee, she rinsed the dish and placed it carefully in the rack, knowing someone would still check if it was chipped later. The phone speaker crackled with excitement as the voice on the other end announced, "Yale, full ride, pre-law." Her father leaned back in his chair, smiling toward the living room like the cousin who delivered the news was standing there in person. "That's incredible," he said. "That boy's always been sharp." Lee sat on the edge of the couch, a folder resting on her lap inside her latest certification. A design program, not Ivy League, not full ride news, but something she'd worked for. Her fingers tightened slightly on the folder. "You hear that, Lee?" her father said, still smiling. "Yale." "I heard." He turned toward her now, So what are you even doing these days? She blinked. I just finished a design course, got certified last week. I was going to. That online thing? He asked, cutting her off. She nodded. Oh, his tone was flat now. That's good. At least you're keeping busy. Her mother walked in from the kitchen, drying her hands. We should send a card. Your cousin's always been focused, not distracted with hobbies. Lee looked down at the folder. Her mother sat beside her, reaching for the remote. What were you saying? Nothing, Lee said, tucking the folder beneath the cushion. The voice on the speaker was still talking about early move-in, dorm preferences, scholarship dinners. No one asked Lee what she was building, what she was trying to turn into something real. Her father clapped his hands once. Yale, that's a name that opens doors. Lee just nodded and stayed quiet, because they only listened when the news wasn't hers. It was one of those late spring parties, the kind with lukewarm drinks, paper plates, and cousins passing around old jokes like hand-me-downs. Lee stood near the drink table, stirring a soda she hadn't touched in 20 minutes. Her sister was holding court near the patio, talking to a cluster of aunts and neighbors. Lee didn't mean to overhear, but the words were loud enough to float over the music. She tries, Amara said with a smile, waving her cup slightly for emphasis. I'll give her that. A few people laughed, not cruelly, not loud. Just polite amusement, the kind that hid in the edges of conversations like that. She's always working on something, an aunt added. Remember the phase where she was building websites? Someone else chimed in. Or was it jewelry making last year? They all laughed again, not mean, just entertained. Well, at least she keeps busy, another said. Lee stood still. From across the yard, no one seemed to notice her. She was half-shadowed behind a tree near the fence, out of reach, but just close enough to hear. She's creative, Amara continued, still smiling. Even if it doesn't always land. More laughter, the neighbor nodded. She's got spirit. Someone poured more punch. A plate dropped, someone shouted a joke, and the conversation shifted. Lee turned back toward the house. No one had meant it to hurt, but it still did. The teasing started small, a joke about how long it took her to park, a comment on her shoes not matching her bag. Dinner was nearly over, the table littered with half-empty glasses and crumbs from the peach cobbler her aunt always brought late. She could get it right if she slowed down once in a while, her brother said, shaking his head as she tried to explain why she'd arrived 10 minutes late. It's not that deep, Lee replied quietly. Relax, Amara added, reaching across for another biscuit. He's just messing with you. Lee tried to move on, tried to smile, but then came the second wave. You're always so sensitive, her mother muttered as she passed a dish down the table. Everything's a thing with you. Lee set down her fork. I'm just asking not to be the punchline every time. Her father looked up. Here we go. Here we go, she repeated. I said one thing. Her mother rolled her eyes. You know how you get. Lee looked around the table. No one said anything. No one looked at her. I'm not starting anything, she said calmly. I just want to have dinner without being dragged for showing up. You don't need to be so dramatic, her brother said. I'm not, she replied. I'm just tired. Her mother sipped her water, unmoved. You're always tired. Lee picked up her napkin, folded it neatly, placed it on her plate. No one stopped her as she stood up and carried her dish to the sink. No one asked if she was okay. But later, they'd say she ruined the mood. The email came late, just past midnight. She already knew what it would say before she clicked. We regret to inform you. The scholarship was gone. One failed course, one had knocked her GPA below the cutoff. And just like that, the funding disappeared. She stared at the screen for a while before closing it. The next morning, her father was at the kitchen table with the newspaper. Her mother stood near the stove, flipping something in a pan. Lee stepped into the room, quiet. I lost the scholarship, she said. Her father didn't look up. Which class? Statistical methods. He turned the page. Should have known better. You hated math. Her mother didn't pause the spatula. That school might not be the right fit anyway. I just needed one more point, Lee said. Well, her father interrupted, finally folding the paper. Maybe it's a sign. Not everyone's path is academic. Maybe it's time to think practical. Her mother set the pan down. Something stable, less stress. Lee nodded slowly. I'll figure it out, she said. Her father stood and tapped her shoulder as he passed. That's what you're good at. Not encouragement, not comfort. Just confirmation of what they already believed, that her stumbling was expected. That the fall fit the story. And once again, she was exactly who they assumed she'd be. She arrived late to the family barbecue. Not by much, 15, maybe 20 minutes. Just enough for the grill to be going, the fold-out tables to be full, and the family photos to have already started. She stepped into the yard, carrying a homemade pasta salad, still warm in its glass dish. No one looked up. The camera clicked. Her mother and father stood shoulder to shoulder with Amara in the middle. Elijah held the baby cousin. Her aunt waved at someone just out of frame. Lee stood at the edge of the patio, the dish still in her hands. No one saved her a seat. No one called her over. She placed the food down quietly on the table with the rest. Covered. Unopened. Across the lawn, Amara gestured for another group shot. Lee hovered just behind the picnic table, waiting for a glance, a nod, anything. Someone shouted, "Don't worry, we'll get a good photo without her." Laughter followed. She didn't move, they didn't stop. Later, when she sat on the steps picking at a paper plate, her mother passed by and finally said, "You're quiet today." Lee looked up. "I always am," she said. Her mother blinked, then smiled lightly like it was a compliment. "I guess that's true." And just like that, she walked away. The phone rang just as she was stepping out of the shower. She wrapped the towel tighter and let it go to voicemail. It rang again, same number, home. She answered the third time. "You don't call anymore," her mother said. Not angry, just sharp in that quiet, passive way that always made Lee brace. "I've been busy," Lee replied, voice flat. There was a pause, then a voice in the background, her father's. "She's probably busy failing." He said it like a joke, like something harmless. Her mother didn't correct him, just said, "We haven't seen anything from you in weeks." No updates. No check-ins. "I needed space," Lee said. Another pause. "Well, don't expect us to chase you," her mother said. "You're grown. If you want to disappear, fine. But don't make us the villains when you're the one pulling away." Lee sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. The towel dampened beneath her. The window was cracked open. A breeze drifted through. "You only reach out when you want something," her mother added. "We miss the version of you who tried." "I still try," Lee said quietly. Her mother scoffed. "Right." Then she hung up. No goodbye, no apology. Just a silence that demanded her to fix the distance without ever asking what caused it. It was supposed to be a quick check-in. Group call. Scheduled by Amara. Just the three siblings, catching up like old times. Lee logged in 2 minutes late. Their faces were already on the screen, Amara's perfectly lit, Elijah's angled like he was mid-scroll. The conversation paused the moment she appeared. "You're always so distant now," Amara said, not smiling. Lee didn't answer right away. She adjusted her headset. "You barely say anything," Elijah added. "We used to joke around. Now it's like talking to a stranger." Lee looked at the camera, then back down at her lap. "I'm here," she said. "Yeah, physically," Amara replied, "but it's like you don't even like us anymore." Lee stayed quiet, her sister sighed. "You know Mom thinks you're mad at all of us." "I'm not mad," Lee said. "Then what is it?" Silence again. Elijah rolled his eyes. "It's exhausting, Lee. We don't know what to do with your mood anymore." Amara leaned forward. "We're trying." Lee finally looked at the screen and still said nothing. She wasn't angry. She was tired of explaining things to people who only listened when she was loud, never when she simply stopped speaking. The call ended 6 minutes later. No one said, "I love you." Thanksgiving was quieter than usual. Fewer cousins, less noise. The kind of gathering where everyone pretended to enjoy each other just enough to get through the meal. Lee sat at the far end of the table, folding a napkin slowly between bites. She hadn't said much all evening. No one had noticed. Her father raised his glass halfway through dessert. "Can I say something real quick?" The table murmured. He looked down toward Lee. "You used to try so hard," he said. "Back then, at least we knew you cared." A hush settled over the table. Forks stopped moving. Elijah shifted in his seat. Amara's eyes darted from their father to Lee. Lee didn't flinch. She placed the napkin on the table, took a slow sip of water, then pushed her chair back and stood. "I did care," she said, voice calm. "You just didn't notice until I stopped." Her mother opened her mouth. but Lee was already walking toward the hallway. She didn't rush. She didn't slam a door or raise her voice. She just left. And no one followed, because it was easier to miss her after she disappeared than to see her when she was still in the room. The message came late, not midnight, but late enough that it felt intentional. You always wanted attention. That's all it said. No hey, no explanation. Just a line from her brother, sent after she quietly unfollowed the entire family on social media. No one said anything when she did it. But now that her absence was visible, now that they couldn't tag her, scroll through her stories, or use her photos for birthday posts, suddenly she was making a statement. Lee stared at the text. Didn't even open it fully. A minute later, another message popped up. You could have just said you were mad. She turned off notifications. She wasn't mad. She was just finished. And for the first time, they were realizing that silence wasn't an invitation to chase her. It was the boundary they never thought she'd enforce. She didn't reply, didn't delete the message. Just let it sit there, unread, like all the years she sat at their table, speaking softly and never being heard. The screenshot came from her cousin, dropped into a message with no caption, just the image. It was a text thread between two older women from church. At the top, her Aunt Mabel. I don't know what's wrong with her. She used to be sweet. Now, no calls, no visits, like we did something. Below it, the neighbor's reply. Maybe she's going through something, or maybe she thinks she's better than the rest of us now. Her cousin added one line, thought you'd want to see what they've been saying. Lee didn't reply. She didn't need to. They called it confusion. Concern. Gossip passed as worry, but no one had asked her. No one had reached out. They talked about her as if silence was rebellion, as if distance was defiance. Not once did they consider it might be reflection. Not once did they wonder what it cost her to stay quiet for so long. And now that the quiet stretched further than they expected, they labeled it as attitude, not survival. She locked her phone, set it face down. Let them whisper. Let them guess. They'd already decided who she was years ago. Now she was just letting them live with it. The message came a few weeks before the funeral. Are you coming to Grandma's? No greeting, no check-in, just a line from Amara. Not we'd like you there. Not we miss you. Just assumption. Lee stared at it for a full minute. No one had called when Grandma got sick. No one texted when the hospice nurse moved in. No one kept her in the loop when the updates came in waves through the family group chat she'd left a year ago. Now, suddenly, her presence was expected. She hovered over the keyboard. Typed, I don't know, deleted it. Typed, thinking about it. Deleted that too. In the end, she didn't respond at all, and when the day came, she didn't go. No explanation, no apology, no last-minute call to say she'd changed her mind. She simply stayed home, sat by the window, lit a candle, held her own kind of goodbye in a room where no one demanded anything from her. She didn't tell them why, because they'd never asked. Not really. The reunion was held at the community center, same as always. Folding chairs, aluminum trays of jollof and egusi, aunties gossiping in corners, uncles pretending to nap. Lee stood near the back wall, sipping something cold, invisible to half the room. She hadn't said much since arriving. Hadn't greeted loudly, hadn't hugged everyone in sight. She'd shown up out of respect, nothing more. Across the room, her mother whispered something to an aunt. She's changed, the aunt replied. Her mother nodded. Doesn't even say hi anymore. They watched her like she was a stranger in familiar clothes. Same eyes, same face, but unreachable now. Lee didn't pretend to be busy. She didn't scan the room looking for someone to cling to. She simply stood, calm and still, not offering the warmth they'd once expected from her by default. People passed her without a second glance. Others stared just a little too long. No one asked how she was. No one crossed the room. They noticed her distance, but none of them remembered the years she'd tried to belong. And now that she didn't, they called it change. But the truth was simpler. She just stopped showing up to be misunderstood. The message came at 12:47 a.m. You could have told me you were struggling. Her sister. No context. No follow-up. As if the struggle had been a secret. As if Lee hadn't spent years speaking in soft requests, in polite boundaries, in quiet disappearances that no one noticed until it inconvenienced them. She read it in the dark, back flat against the couch, phone glowing in her hand. She didn't respond, Because what was there to say? That she had tried? That they'd called it drama? That she'd gone silent because the only thing worse than not being heard was being heard and ignored? The message stayed open for a few minutes before she locked the screen. No anger, no sadness, just a line she refused to carry anymore. She set the phone down, turned off the light, and let the quiet settle around her, not as punishment but peace. Her father said it over the phone, voice clipped and distant. "What happened to you?" The question wasn't curious. It was accusatory, like she'd broken something he was still trying to pretend was whole. Lee didn't reply right away. He continued. "I told my friend about that interview I arranged for you. You declined it." "I did." "Why?" "I didn't want it." He let out a dry laugh. "You think you know better now than people who have worked their whole lives to help you." "You didn't ask what I wanted," she said. "You just decided it for me." "I was trying to help, Lee. We do everything for you, and this is what we get." She stood at the window, watching two kids ride bikes down the street below. "You never did it for me. You did it so I'd fall into place." He went quiet for a second. Then, "We're your family, you don't walk away from that." "I didn't walk away," Lee said calmly. "I just stopped walking in circles." There was no response. No argument, just a low exhale, then the dull click of the call ending. She didn't call back, because choosing herself wasn't betrayal. It was the first thing she'd done that didn't require their approval. Her mother called in the middle of the afternoon. No text first, no warning, just a trembling voice on the other end of the line. "We just want you back." It wasn't a demand, it was pleading. A collapse she hadn't expected to hear. "I don't know when it happened," her mother said. "You stopped trying, you stopped showing up. We didn't know it was that bad." Lee sat on the edge of her bed, one sock on, laundry half folded beside her. Her mother sniffled. "If we hurt you, we didn't mean to, we didn't see it." Lee said nothing. "Come for dinner," her mother said. "Let's just start there." Still, Lee said nothing. Because she remembered every dinner where she wasn't asked how she was. Every meal where her voice wasn't loud enough to register. Her mother's voice cracked. "I can't fix it if you don't tell me what broke." Lee looked out the window. "I did," she whispered, silence on the other end. That was the difference now. Her mother's breakdown didn't move her. It wasn't cruelty. It was clarity. Because once she would have cried too. Now she could hear the pain and still choose not to go back. The next call came the following evening. This time Lee answered. Her mother's voice was softer. Tired. "I've been thinking," she said. "It was never too late until you made it so." Lee didn't interrupt. "I know we didn't do everything right. I know we made you feel like you had to earn your place." Still, she said nothing. "I just don't understand how we got here." Lee spoke calmly, clearly. "You got used to the version of me who tried for scraps, who folded herself to fit into a space you never made room for." Her mother exhaled shakily. "I stopped trying when I realized I was never being seen, just managed." A pause, then softly. "So this is it." Lee didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. She didn't bend. "This is honesty," she said. "Not anger, not punishment, just truth." She waited for her mother to respond, but nothing came, so she ended the call. No dramatic hang-up, no final word, just a quiet click, and for the first time in her life, she walked away from that conversation with nothing left unsaid. She doesn't even seem angry anymore. Elijah said it to a cousin at the wedding, watching Lee from across the reception hall. She stood by the exit in a navy dress, hands folded, smiling gently at the bartender's joke, then gone again into the background, as if she belonged to the room but not the people in it. The cousin followed his gaze. "Isn't that a good thing?" Elijah shook his head. "It's worse now." "How?" "Because she's just done." Across the room, Lee picked up her glass, nodded politely at an aunt who used to ask her if she was trying hard enough, then drifted outside to the balcony. No drama, no storm, just distance. It unsettled them, the absence of heat, the quiet where fight used to live, the calm she wore like a final answer. She wasn't proving anything. She wasn't performing. She wasn't there to be fixed. She was simply no longer theirs to interpret, and that unnerved them more than any explosion would have. The photo sat in the center of the dining table. An old one, a birthday maybe, or a holiday. Lee, younger, smiling too wide in a dress that didn't quite fit, holding a slice of cake while the rest of the family leaned in. Her mother stood over it, fingers grazing the edge of the frame. "She stopped trying," she whispered, "and we didn't even ask why." No one replied. The house was quiet, not in the peaceful way it used to be when Lee stayed up late sketching in the living room or playing soft music in the kitchen. Just quiet. The family had gathered again, smaller now, more scattered. Amara sat near the window. Elijah scrolled through his phone without looking up. A few cousins had drifted in and out, but no one filled the gap. Her seat was empty. They hadn't set a place for her. No one had thought to, and even now, no one knew how to reach her. Because the distance they once mocked had grown into silence, and the silence had turned into absence. And by the time they noticed, she was already gone. Thank you for watching. Please do not forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. I love you all.